Now we're recording. Hi, I'm Luke. This is Vanessa. Okay.
Hello.
So you have not started your first software job yet. You're starting.
Next week on Monday.
Okay. So when did you accept your offer?
A few weeks ago, probably early June. Yeah,
Okay.
or end of May.
Okay. Well after the big tech layoffs in November 2022. All right. Let's jump into the questions here. Do you have any prior work experiences, like a career before this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before this career change for me, I worked in the healthcare and biotech industry as a clinical lab scientist for about 9 to 10 years. So my background is in science and laboratory testing.
Okay. So did you have to have a degree for that?
Yeah, I had a bio degree. But first, like I thought I was gonna end up in medical school, because my family encouraged that. But when it comes the time to apply for medical school, I didn't feel ready for it. So I just took a bio degree, and from then on, I just tried to figure out what I wanted to do with the bio degree, and I just stumbled into laboratory science. And I felt like, well, I didn't have to deal with people one on one. I can be behind the scenes. But it became a bit repetitive, and I needed something more challenging and would challenge me to learn something new all the time. So I found web development. And in fact, I started learning how to code when I was in middle school, but I quit around high school because I felt like I wasn't smart enough for it. But C++ at that time was very hard to learn. But when I relearned JavaScript around this time, it just clicked better for me.
Hmm. And so, what kind of training did you go through?
I At first I thought I was gonna do boot camp, but I didn't like being married to some kind of schedule, and it forced me to learn everything in 3 months. So I did the self-taught route. And so I found various resources through the internet. My first one was Code Academy, but over this process, I learned that I did not like to read. I wanted to see something more visual and do more hands-on learning. So I found the resource called Scrimba, and that's where I got to really deep dive into React and learn like the foundations.
Is Scrimba free?
Yes. But then like when you wanted to go to more advanced levels, you can sign up for a membership to take their other courses or even do like a boot camp style career path.
And that's interesting. Did you wind up spending any money on Scrimba or throughout your learning process?
I did. Yeah, it's like $20 here, $30 there. I also took some classes through Udemy and also Zero to Mastery Academy. So I liked taking like courses that eventually had like a project at the end. But what I like about it is at my own pace, and I can schedule like going to trips in between. So I'm not like just stuck to like a boot camp style, like 50, 60 hour weeks.
Okay, so that brings up another question. What kind of time were you able to devote to learning while you were going through self-taught?
Yeah, when I first started, I scheduled 40-hour weeks, about 6 months straight to just learn from the basics like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, and then other um, features of React like React Router and other kinds of topics too, like object-oriented programming, some back end, just a little bit of everything. But that was around the time where I felt really overwhelmed because there was just a lot of things to learn. But that's where I decided I want to focus on front end because I feel a lot more um excited about it, and it's a lot more fun for me since it brings up my creative side to it. And so growing up, I had a lot of creative hobbies like painting, drawing, DIY creativity. So front end was felt like more like me.
Okay. So you devoted 6 months and 40 hours a week. So were you working during that time?
In the beginning, I didn't. But then towards the end, I saw like my savings kind of dwindling. So that's when I decided to work part-time. And I worked part-time in my previous industry. So it was like a great way to feel secure. Like I can learn at my own pace and also apply for jobs at the same time. So I don't feel pressured to really find my first role.
Okay. So from like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like at that point, you said like 6 months and 40 hours a week, and you quit your job at that point.
Yeah, I quit my full-time job in my last career around March of last year. So
Mm.
from April on, I did my self-taught route. And around September, August, September last year, that's when I started applying for jobs. And of course, around that time is when I start hearing about these mass layoffs. So, so not too long after, I just got a part-time job to feel like I can sustain this for like at least a year or maybe two. I was expecting to be doing this for maybe 2 years.
Mm.
That's why I got the part-time job to just sustain my learning and also job hunting.
And so tell me about like the experience of like, man, I just quit my full-time career. I just spent months learning and now I'm seeing all these layoffs. Like what were the thoughts going through your head?
Yeah, I also read about what other people think about this on Reddit, but after a while, it was starting to make me worry too much. Because of all the uncertainty and feeling like, oh, I'm competing against all these people who have so much experience. But I decided to just turn off that noise by not like reading into layoffs or like Reddit pages where people are like talking about doom and gloom. So I just tuned that out and just started thinking about like what can I do to give myself experience and to keep working at this without feeling like I'm walking into like the abyss and not get anything back. So I just focused on what kind of value can I give to future companies, and also how can I sustain like my own mental health throughout this whole process.
Okay. And so from March, when you start or you quit your job, and then in
Mhm.
April you started training, and then you said you got your offer when? Uh,
End of May and early June. Yeah.
okay, so that's I'm bad at math. What is that? 9 months?
Yeah, about 9 months.
Somewhere around there. Somebody will
Yeah.
correct me. Cool. Well, so yeah, zero to first job in 9 months. And when you were working part time, what did your trainings like? How many hours a week were you working, and did you have to back off from 40 hours a week in, your software training?
Yeah, so my schedule is that I was able to find a per diem job at the hospital. So that requires me to work 2 weekends per month. And that's like 8-hour days in the evenings. So I picked up like the job that nobody wanted. So I can work on the weekends in the evenings and then focus on applying and learning and even, doing LinkedIn stuff during the week. And I make sure I schedule like what each day of the week would be. For example, like Mondays, I like to not have a lot of things scheduled so I can catch up on maybe shows, just start my week slow so I don't feel pressured to just, okay, this week I need to do this. But Mondays, I make it very, very relaxed. So that will set like the tone of my week is that I try to stay as relaxed as possible, have a positive um mindset and attitude. And then Tuesdays, I like to work on projects. For example, like Hack for LA, which or an internship. So I do my internship or open source projects that day so I can just work all day on just coding. And the rest of the week, I would just plan out maybe more project days. One day would be focusing on learning data structures and algorithms, challenges like that. Read up on technical topics, like how can I explain what object-oriented programming is or what's closure. And other days, it would just be reaching out to people, networking, and try to build like a community or try to reach out to the community and be with the community in tech. Um, but I will also dedicate one day a week in like researching what sort of jobs I want to apply for, look for different companies I want to focus on. Um, and also I would do mass applying. So I would just not, focus on what companies I want to target. I just mass apply and see what I get.
Okay. So a couple questions out of that. So you mentioned an internship. So what was the internship?
The internship is in web development, working with React for a startup gaming company. Just to name them, they're called Seminot. So it's an unpaid internship, but it's a chance to work with other people and a big code base for 3 months. So they do have cycles of cohorts of people working together. You are also a sign-up partner. So when you are stuck on maybe an issue or a bug, you can work with another partner to solve that problem. But we're all um, dedicated to certain tasks depending on what team you are and contribute that way. So I was in a UI UX team. So I was helping with different tasks like making sure the page was responsive, and I'm creating new features too, like creating like a comment page. So it's various tasks that gave me a lot of skills and experience to talk about in job interviews.
Hmm, interesting. And how did you get that interview or that
The internship.
yeah.
Yeah, I found it through LinkedIn jobs actually.
And you just cold applied?
Yeah, I cold applied um and they told me about what the internship is like what to expect, and that's when I found out it was unpaid, but I'm like, okay, it's still a good experience. So it's better than working on a solo project in my opinion, because I wanted to learn like how do companies um develop their software or their projects.
Okay. Interesting. And do you feel like, I mean, I know it's an unpaid internship, but do you feel like that was competitive to get?
Yeah, I was actually pretty surprised it's competitive to get too.
Okay.
Just hearing from like the directors and CEOs of the program, get hundreds of applicants, but they only have to choose like a certain amount that they can handle. Because they don't just make people do things. They are also teaching certain technical topics during the internship and then assigning different pairs or developers on the tasks that they want them to do.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, you also mentioned like, when you were laying out your schedule, like how you like to, set up your week, you mentioned like networking and you just said like networking and then moved on. Like, what does networking mean?
To me, networking means just expanding like my friends through LinkedIn. I see it as just like a group of people I want to hear from and see what their experience like. So in the beginning, I targeted um, alumni from the college I went to. I went to UC Berkeley. So I went through the LinkedIn UC Berkeley website, LinkedIn page, and looked through the different alumni they had. And I would look through their current job title and see if they're a developer. And then I would reach out to them, cold reach out, saying like, hey, I went to UC Berkeley like you, and I saw that you are a developer. I'm wondering if you would be interested in just sharing about your work, what your journey is like. And if I noticed that they had a different degree, like non CS degree, and how they became a software developer, I would tell them that I'm also trying to do a career change and I would like to hear how they did it. So a lot of my time in the beginning with networking is hearing from people that I have similar interests in, like, being a college alum, and see how they did it and what I can like pick up from those stories. And I learned that every single person had a different way of getting into tech, whether it's just they just got picked up by a recruiter or they mass applied, or if they got a job interview through a friend or a network. There was just various ways of getting into tech. And that's when I realized like I should just not focus on one type of way to getting into tech. I just focused on trying to do all kinds of ways to get into tech because I don't know like what my story would be like. And for me at the end, it turned out to be mass applying rather than like networking or getting a referral from somebody. So mass applying worked for me.
Okay. And so how many interviews did you generate?
I generated like if it's um like face-to-face interviews, I would say about 6 interviews out of 561 applications I sent out.
Oh my God. That's a lot of applications. Okay. And so were there phone calls outside of those six? Like what are the others?
Yeah. Yeah, there were phone calls and then maybe like a test to like coding test that you take before, meeting with somebody. So maybe like a few of those, I didn't really count them as like interviews.
Mhm.
I only counted the ones where I had like actual phone calls or Zoom meetings to call them as interviews.
Okay. And of the six interviews you got, the face-to-face ones, were there coding tests before the interviews?
So one of them was a take-home test, and the rest are um coding on sites, except for one, which was the job that I got recently, where they mostly focused on personality, cultural, and technical communication as part of their interview testing.
Okay. So the job you wound up getting, right, the offer, um, they had you do pre-interview stuff, but it was more like personality, less coding.
Yeah, I didn't have like a one-on-one coding session with somebody. They mostly tested me on my experience with software development or web development, like what the development cycle is and what sort of experience I had. And I ended up talking mostly about what I've done at the unpaid internship and my open source contribution through Hack for LA. And turns out a lot of the things I've done at those companies were almost similar to what they're doing at their work. So I think that was like a positive sign for them that I could do to do their development cycle or process.
Okay. And so I feel like maybe I'm hitting on this too much, but does that mean there was no technical like coding challenge for the job you got?
No, it was just they asked me a lot of technical questions, but not the actual coding. And I did had to show um my past coding snippets on what I've created before. So I've shared them the repo of what I've written before. Actually, not repo, a file, a coding file that I've written, and also some screenshots to show like what it's supposed to look like. But during the interviews with the various people at the company, they asked me about like my technical knowledge, like how do I make a reusable component, or how would I design a component or a page where I make an API call and it gives me this kind of data. How do I sort out that data? How would I present it on the page that I'm building? So at that time, I was only focused on React, and they use Vue. So I I was still able to explain a lot of the thought process in a very general way, but also kind of technical way. So I can convey like how I would produce things in the front end side of things.
Okay. Um, were there multiple interviews for
For the for this job, yes. I think 6 total
oh
interviews.
my God, 6 interviews.
Yeah, yeah. It was about 6 weeks too.
Wow. And so I mean, I assume that they weren't all technical in nature, right? You know, where they're asking you technical questions. They were like with like a HR person or like a manager type. Like, what were
Mhm. Yeah, the first one was HR, just making sure like I'm a real person and then I'm the person who I am in the resume. And the next two are with technical people from the team. Like one is my direct manager, and the second one is another manager in DevOps. And then the last three are the higher ups. It's a small startup company, so I was able to meet the director, CTO, and CEO, and that's where they talked to me about the culture and how things are being done at the company. So after those last 3 interviews, I had a really good idea of what kind of work I would be doing, and what the overall big picture of the company is and what kind of direction that company is headed.
okay, interesting. So this is backing up a little bit, but when you were cold applying these 500, plus applications you sent out, where were you sending them?
Mostly on LinkedIn, but I also tried Indeed and Otta.com, OTTA.com, and Y Combinator and Well Found. So I was focused on mostly startups and mid-sized companies, but I did apply to a few big companies.
And did you see one of those job boards performing better for you, like generating more opportunities?
I would say LinkedIn was probably the best one where I got a lot of callbacks.
Okay.
Um, but there were some really unique ones too. Like I applied to the Airbnb internship program and got to the very end, but didn't work out for me.
And was that one generated through LinkedIn?
I actually heard about um the job post for Airbnb through a friend who's who's already like working as an engineer, but he was just watching out for me. So as soon as that was posted, he told me right away, and I applied right away too.
Oh, so you like went to their website to apply for that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you're obviously doing a lot of cold applying. So was your Like, did you do cover letters? Did you reach out to hiring managers, or was it just like one click apply? Like, where were you in there?
I did mostly one click apply, but also did a lot of the outside, like for example, instead of doing easy apply, I also do ones that go to the company website to apply. So I would like, clench clench my fist and go like, okay, I'm gonna do this even though I'm not really liking this website. I'm just gonna have to retype all my job descriptions. Like I'm just gonna go through it all. I also, after submitting some of the applications, like the ones that I really interested in, like that's related to healthcare or some of my interests, I would reach out to the recruiter or the manager, but I never heard back from that.
Okay. All right. Um, so going forward again, so what do you think you did well in the interview process for this job you got?
Yeah, I think just having the past experience of interviewing um, that led up to this one really helped me do my best. Like just being prepared in general, like having my star stories, the different kind of projects I've done, the details of it, and then having like kind of soft skill stories too, like I would bring up my best achievements that I've had in my past career and how that experience would be um, a contribution for for the upcoming company. Like I would say, this is what I've done before, so this is what I can do for your company.
Mhm. Cool. Um, how much of the tech stack, like that was on the job description, did you have training experience with?
So, it's interesting. Like when I for this job, I remember it didn't really focus on like the tech stack. It was mostly on the type of person you are and whether you'd be a cultural fit. That's what I remember about that job description. So I was pretty surprised that they still picked up my resume, even though I only had React experience because it's focused on Vue. Um, but I think that's where my past experience as a scientist really elevated my resume for this company because their company creating tools and software for scientists in research. So I think my background really made me stand out. And also because I have the stories to tell and some experience to back up my coding skills, it kept me elevated or stay, in the at least top three of the candidates they had.
Okay. So you think it was less about like, well, she fits our tech stack really nicely. It was more like they're looking for a cultural fit and somebody who
Hmm.
has technical experience, maybe even technical experience doing the things we're doing. But it
Hmm.
was kind of like the focus was over here instead of over there.
Yeah, I think the fact that I was a scientist and I had experience trying to like before I had to do a lot of administrative stuff manually, and then I had that story weaved in saying I want to make the administrative side for scientists a little bit easier, and then that worked with their mission, which was to make the administrative side of research easier for scientists. So that like really weaved in with their company mission and core values.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it. Okay. So I think we've already touched on this a little bit, but why do you think you got an offer?
I think I got the offer because of what I've already mentioned. I had a mix of technical experience that's similar to their software development cycle, and also maybe my personality and cultural similarities or company culture that I could relate to. Um, and also maybe having the um past experience as a scientist. I think that was like the biggest one is being a scientist for a company that's creating stuff for scientists.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like a really good fit. Like you had to do a lot of digging, but like it sounds like the match made in heaven, right? So that's really cool.
Hmm.
Well, I think that runs through all the questions I had, and I think we're about on time, maybe a little longer, but not a problem. And I just want to say thank you, Vanessa, for your time. And I think, you sharing your story, your experience will help provide, positive things to other people. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I had a good time and thanks for letting me share my story.
Yeah. Yeah. And congratulations. I'm excited for you. Monday.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited too.
Okay. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.